Monday Morning Matters. Perspectives from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Good morning, this is Grace.
And you're with us at our Monday Morning Matters, where we talk about issues pertinent to Southeast Asia. And this time, just over 1 year and 1 day on the missing flight MH370 on the 8th of March 2014, we are remembering and recounting back the incident and what happened after that. So just to let you know, the flight is still missing. And we have Azrul Khalib. He has been vocal about this particular issue, has been writing about it since last year when the flight was missing. So hi Azrul.
Oh, hi Arlene, hi Grace.
Hello.
So did you go to any of the events yesterday on remembering flight MH370?
Yes, there were quite a few events yesterday in commemoration, but also in remembrance of the passengers and crew of MH370, and I was at one of them, which was organized by the Council of Churches Malaysia and the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. So, just to go backwards, recounting back on how it happened, what were you doing that day? For me, I was actually at home because news about missing flight rarely happen. Even if it happened, it's always not that close to home. It's always like in other continents, so you don't really feel the pinch of it. But I still remember the morning on the 8th of March where there's this news reported in CNN and all this international media about a missing flight, and the missing flight happened to be Malaysia Airlines. To me, that's just, we rarely make to the news unless it's negative news. So this is something that I was really amazed when it happened. What about you?
When it happened, right, I was at the event, and then I happened to have a lot of apps to receiving newses, and then I was like, I got a lot of pop on my phone. I was like, what's happening?
A lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, so what happened? And the people like, Grace, MH370 apparently went missing. I was like, no, it will come back. But then I'm so sorry, it was sort of like, brought a lot of sad news to a lot of families and friends. Mm-hmm. And since then, there's no confirmed news on MH370.
So, for you, I'm sure in the past there were several flights that went missing, but it wasn't that such a big a deal for Malaysians, right?
Well, when I heard the news that particular morning, I was actually at a unity rally in Ipoh, and it was quite astonishing because I think the last time this sort of thing happened with a significant loss of life, it was back in the 70s. And
the recent one, the Air France.
Talking in Malaysian context.
Okay.
And there was the crash landing of a one of those light aircraft under mass wings, for example, and that was a lot earlier, and there was a loss of life, but it wasn't like this. And this one had 239 people who have basically just disappeared. So I think when you look at the way Malaysians reacted to this news, it was with a certain amount of shock, but also a certain amount of disbelief.
Yep.
And I think the word disbelief is very much prevalent when it came to this. MH370 has been described as one of the I think greatest mysteries of aviation recent aviation history.
Definitely. Yeah. When I was younger, I loved to read all this mystery. What they call it? What they call that word, where it is a mystery but it's still unproven, especially issues related to the Bermuda Triangle, where a lot of missing flight. But I read it because it was something that I never thought it would happen in the modern days. In the past, maybe you have lesser technology, so when a plane go missing, you will blame it on aliens. But nowadays, even with the technology like GPS and all this advanced system where you can use satellite to track down individuals, so when the flight MH370 gone missing for more than a month or a week, to me, this is just the biggest mystery that probably would never be unsolved.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things that have been produced recently is a whole slew of documentaries about MH370, and I think let's leave the speculation to the armchair pilots and armchair experts. But when you look at it, this particular documentary said, if you look at the cockpit of an airplane, almost every instrument there, every modification there has been as a result of an incident or disaster. This particular instrument was introduced as a result of that disaster. This particular was, and in this case, MH370 now, because of its, in the day of, as you said, days of GPS, where you can use your iPhone to find out exactly where you're at, within
can track down meters. Osama bin Laden.
Well, that was pretty tough, but I there's so much technology now that's available where you can track down even your dog that goes missing. Yet we have lost an entire aircraft that's worth millions of dollars, 239 lives on board. So what's happened now is the International Aviation Organization now, ICAO, which is UN, is basically now introducing new technologies where it will be in the future
of aviation
almost impossible to lose another aircraft in this way.
So
MH370.
So in a way that the conventional of using the black box should never it will be seen as an outdated technology, and the future would be beyond just the black box.
Well, the reality is the black box, or orange box as it is actually, is actually 60s technology. It isn't the latest cutting edge technology, but also the black box is only useful within the context of a crash, meaning you have to be able to find the aircraft wreckage. You need to be able to extricate the flight recorder and the cockpit data recorder from the site in which the wreckage lies. So, say for example, this thing is in 2 kilometers of water. How then are you going to extract, this, which is the size of a shoebox, when it has been years after, so these are challenges which at the end of the day, the flight data recorder, the cockpit data recorder cannot be depended upon to provide the answers we seek. In the context of MH370 and also in terms of technologies for the future which are going to improve on our understanding of where aircraft are, what has been proposed is it's like a modem, or it's like continuously connected, where updates are not being fed once every 30 minutes or something, but a continuous stream of information that is being provided back to the airline as to where the aircraft is, what the condition is, what's happening.
But why only after one huge major incident where change, they only want to have change to take place in the aviation industry? Since the 60s, it seems like the aviation industry was quite comfortable with the status quo, which is just to rely on 60s technology.
Well, the thing is about all this is really it's economics. And as I said to you just now, this documentary pointing out that when you look at the instruments in the cockpit, it's slow revisions, and slow air worthiness directives that are issued, by the FAA. And when you look at all these issues that are being raised, for the airlines to be able to then incorporate into the existing systems, it at the end of the day, it's economics, whether you have the money or not. Believe it or not, this technology that can track continuously an aircraft in mid-air and be able to report back at basically instantaneous information, only one airline company today is actually having that technology installed, which is one Alaskan-based airline. You know, only one. We're not even talking about Emirates. We're not even talking about Qatar Airlines or all the British Airways or American Airlines. Nobody's installed it simply because it's dollars and cents. They're going to have to invest money in this.
For me personally, I think it's ignorance, because if you look at the money that airline would spend in terms of improving the comfort of its passenger, especially its first class passenger, you'll be blown away. They would include the latest technology in terms of Wi-Fi, in terms of television, even on food, on the comfort of the seat and all that. So for them to not wanting to spend 1 cent more in terms of security, it's a bit dumbfounding, because to me the stability of the airline industry rely on its security, because it is safer than driving your car. So if it is being perceived as not as safe as people want it to be, people would rather go through a more traditional means to travel, or if not, they would probably just decide not to travel at all via air.
Yeah, this is especially when you look at budget airlines, for example. Everybody's trying to squeeze every dollar, every cent out of every leg space that you have on board. In fact, I don't know whether you've heard, but there's even this proposal of standing up passengers.
Oh.
Like a bus, So instead of you sitting down, people are standing up to capitalize on the amount of space that's available, to optimize the amount of space that's available on board. But this is where, at the end of the day, safety is first, and we shouldn't compromise on safety in the pursuit of profits, of the bottom line and the profit margin. And one thing that's very clear with regards to Malaysian Airlines is that this is an airline that has maintained the highest levels of quality in terms of its maintenance, in terms of its service, and also, most importantly, in terms of the adherence to standards. And this has not just been something that the Malaysian Airlines company claims. This has been recognized by
international bodies.
So this is a situation where, in terms of MH370, we do not know until today what exactly happened. And this needs to be said, because any pet theory or conspiracy, speculation or whatever, is basically that. It's speculation.
Talking about the flight itself, it was supposed to be a flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, China, and it was supposed to be just, if I'm not mistaken, a 6 hours journey. In a way that just in the middle of the journey they lost contact. But one thing I was really amazed in terms of people, if you look at the Wikipedia entry, it has minute by minute counting of how the moment it took off until the moment where they lost contact with the flight itself. So people are really interested or really have the knowledge to understand MH370 disappearance. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, 1 month after the plane has been missing, there were even companies that created platforms for people to crowdsource their knowledge, to search meter by meter in terms of trying to look at the wreckage of the flight itself, although it was to no avail. But the amount of people trying to work together with the authorities, and when I say the authorities, it's not just the Malaysian authorities, it's a combined effort of many parties, including the US, China, Australia, and our neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. One thing positive, if I were to get not one thing but two things positive that I were to get out of this missing flight is, the amount of support by the public, especially the Malaysian public, and another one, the amount of cooperation you would see in international relations. Countries that don't see eye to eye to each other, like China and the US, would actually work together to share technology and knowledge of maritime knowledge. So what's your view on this? Because to me it shows that the world is not all that bad. That's how I say.
I certainly hope so.
Well, it's not only US and China, but also Australia is also putting their helping hands in this, investigating to find the MH370, and also, if I'm not mistaken, Korea was also part of it.
Yes,
But
Korea.
there was a very irony sort of part here, as much as there were great support from the public and the authorities, but then the communication between the government and the public, there was something wrong there. And then especially when the government did announce that it was actually crashed into Indian Ocean, there was huge controversial sort of a communication breakdown, because public still wants to know exact the location where the MH370 was, but the government just simply put the words saying that it's just crash, and then that brought a lot of devastation and frustration to families and friends.
But let's just say, let's first talk about the international cooperation part. You know, I think it is without a doubt an unprecedented scale of cooperation that we saw in the wake of MH370 with regards to the governments and countries over a huge area, in which so many countries pitched in to help out. You know, we had the Vietnamese Air Force, for example, scouring the
because it is
South China Sea.
The initial thought it was near to the Vietnam waters.
Yeah. And then we've had even India. We've had even countries like Thailand, Indonesia, of course Australia. So many countries coming forward to help out, you know, trying to look for this.
And we have the US lending their latest Navy technology.
Exactly. And but the thing is this, and this is where I think Grace's point with regards to information, with regards to being upfront, it's something that I think the Malaysian government did a disservice and was in the wrong in not wanting to be open with the information that was available, was not upfront with regards to being transparent as to where this airplane actually went, because precious days were spent in the South China Sea looking for an airplane that did not or was not possibly there. You know, it had backtracked and crossed the peninsula of Malaysia, and this is a fact that was seen on military radar.
Right.
And the fact that the Malaysian government knew it, did not share this information, not to mention that the military were not forthcoming with this information. Malaysians especially need to ask why that happened. Why is it that there was reluctance to share information that was critical in a airplane disaster incident? Days, hours are critical in terms of making sure we're able to look for the airplane. We spent so many days looking in the wrong place, only to find out that people knew they headed off in another direction.
We will discuss more about the direction of the plane, because I think it was all over the place, to the extent that even the Raja Bomo came and helped to to locate the plane unsuccessfully. So anyway, we'll take one short break, and then we will return with more discussion at our Monday Morning Matters.
Monday Morning Matters. Perspectives from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, we are with Azrul, Khalib, to discuss about today's Monday morning matters topic, which is about MH370. So, regarding on the flight, Malaysia Airlines MH370, a lot of things had happened since then, a year on. And of course, one of the biggest criticism is about the Malaysian government's response, like you mentioned earlier before the break. The Malaysian government response towards the MH370, I would sum up as a typical Malaysian politician response to supposedly they assume a local issue, but unfortunately it has been the international media has been focusing on it too much, that this is no longer a village issue, a Malaysian issue. This is an international issue, and they were not prepared by the criticism and the kind of transparency that they should have when it comes to providing information. My take on it, Malaysian government or Malaysian politicians in general, they need to prepare that the world does not respond to the way Malaysian responds to our politics.
Yeah, I think it was so glaring when MH370 happened, how because the Malaysian government is used to dealing with a very compliant population, which doesn't voice out opposition, doesn't question.
We are too nice, right?
Yeah, we're very nice. We just take, and it's very paternalistic attitude that's been taken on, which is, you will take the information that we give you and you will like it, and you will take it and you will accept it, and you better not question back. So you could see from the early press conferences of MH370, where basically what happened was that the government officials were indignant that there were these rude journalists asking really penetrating questions to them. In fact, quite a few of them responded back in a very unprofessional manner, and I think it was an embarrassment, because this was basically a situation where we needed to show Malaysia at its best in times of tragedy, in times of where we need to have the priority of the welfare of the passengers and crew to be at the forefront. What we were more concerned about, I'm sorry to say, was covering our collective butts, in terms of that. And it was shameful, because today, when you look at accountability of what happened, we know that the military, for example, as we mentioned earlier, could saw this plane on its radar, knew that there was a civilian aircraft up there, had knowledge of this, did not communicate it to the investigators as to what happened until several days later. And yet, the leadership of the military, of the Air Force, and the head of the armed forces remains today the same. The people who were responsible for this negligence, for what I would say even criminal negligence with regards to an investigation that was happening, still have their jobs. Why is that? Why have they not resigned? Whose head has rolled as a result of that oversight? And I have to ask, because it seems like people can do a lot of things in positions of huge responsibility and still get away when they screw up, and this was a huge screw up.
It was. In fact, if you look at the kind of response that you get from the victims from China, it's so intense that none of them can even talk to them, to the extent that they really want to demand the justice, but they are not getting it. But the funny thing is, from the Malaysian side, it's a bit more peaceful. We kind of accepted that, life is like this, so just
Malaysians are,
just live it
I'm
like
sorry
that.
to say, a fatalistic lot, and this is a little bit of a problem, because this is how people who should be held accountable get away with it, because they're depending on this c'est la vie, attitude.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's a problem.
I don't know, but to me, even if it was supposed to be China's government, having to report about this, I think the Chinese people from China would probably be very vocal if they are not getting the kind of information that they want.
At the end of the day, regardless whether you're Chinese or you're Australian, you're New Zealand, or any nationality that any country who had their citizens on board this airplane, especially Malaysia, everybody has a right to be able to demand answers, to demand full upfront transparency, especially since we don't know anything about what happened.
But why the Malaysian government are very they do not want to reveal the document or the information right on.
The thing is, honestly, there's a lot of people who say there's a conspiracy, Malaysian government is hiding something. I think we give them too much credit. When we say that Malaysian government is hiding something, it seems that as if they're cleverer more than they are. And the reality is that sometimes it just boils back down to competence. And
you mean leadership?
And also whether it's business as usual. Today, the way the government has responded to even MH370, is as if it's business as usual. And this is wrong, because the opaqueness, the lack of being open to questions, being able to share information and so forth, is fueling speculation, is fueling conspiracies which are going out of control. So today it could very well be an issue of competency rather than one of dark conspiracies and agendas and so forth. So I think this is a huge disservice to the families of the passengers and crew of MH370.
But it's typical Malaysian government response towards any local issue. In
exactly.
fact,
business as usual.
I just give example on one or two of the domestic issue. Let's say a question about GST, question about what would be the direction of this country. Whenever it's met by confrontation either by the opposition or by the Malaysian public, usually the response will be either silence or they will just give enough information for the people to be satisfied. But not enough to tell the whole truth.
All we have to do is look at the responses of the Malaysian government versus other governments that have responded to tragedies, of similar kind. How did you feel when you watched the ceremonies of the Dutch government commemorating the victims of MH17? That amazing and heart-moving and touching and respectful memorial that was held by the Dutch government. I mean, granted, a large number of their citizens were on board the plane, but they didn't really have to do that. Yet when we look back at the Malaysian government's responses and calls for them to do the same thing, they barely did anything. In fact, the honor ceremonies at the airport that we did in our country was after the Dutch did that amazing tribute in respect to the victims of MH17. We had to see other people in order to do something on our own. But
in fact, the Malaysian government didn't want. It's not doing the first year anniversary of the disappearance.
That is a mistake. It is a mistake to pretend
that it never happened.
Well, it's not so much to pretend it never happened. It's that we're hoping that it will just fade away into, because I spoke to somebody the other day from one of those who are responding to these issues, and it was indicated to me that the reason why the Malaysian government doesn't want to do MH370 memorial, or even MH17 for that matter, is that it doesn't want to have to do it every year then. That to do it would be to relive the memory of what happened and also the unpleasantness of it all. And it is better to just, and the standard is, please commemorate it in your own way and private ceremonies and so forth. And this is wrong, because it is an attitude of a government that wishes this nightmare would just go away and that it doesn't have to do it. This is the first year.
Yep.
First year. It's such an important year. You don't do it next year, fine. Maybe the fifth year you have to do it, but the first year.
Not even a speech.
How can you not do anything.
To
It's
me,
important.
To me, not even a speech to somehow console the family of the victims of MH370. It is really something that is dumbfounding to me.
You know, it shows a mindset that doesn't feel itself accountable, that doesn't feel that it needs to be going out of its way to, you know, to do something of this nature. But most importantly, I think, it has not given a measure of compassion. It hasn't given any sort of hand gesture of sympathy and caring to the families affected. Because this is important not really for us, it's for the families of those affected. This 239 families here that we're talking about, that's thousands of people.
In fact, the way the Malaysian government responds to the MH370 disappearance is so devastating that it actually affected our tourism industry. Especially Chinese tourists are actually one of the largest tourists in Southeast Asia, and especially Malaysia. Malaysian Airlines is almost at its very tipping point in terms of the way it gained revenues. If the government don't see the way its action as affecting the dollars and cents of the Malaysian economy, it will be a very bleak outcome if the next disaster or crisis happen in this country and we are not prepared for it.
You know, it's a confidence issue. At the end of the day, people look at the way Malaysian government and the Malaysian people, for that matter, responds to these issues, because it provides a measure of how people view that particular country and its people in terms of how they are able to be looking beyond themselves. You know, and when it comes to this issue, we have failed. But when I say we, I say the Malaysian government has failed. But when it comes to the Malaysian people, I feel that it was something to see last year, where the Malaysian civil society, Malaysian people stepped up and gave an outpouring of support and care to perfect strangers. I mean, these are total strangers, yet they stood up, they said, they expressed their love, their care and feelings of support to these people. And we had all these walls of hope that was set up by Malaysians for Malaysia, that were set up in all these malls.
People volunteering themselves to assist with the crisis control and
NGOs
the
were
mask.
stepping up. You know, volunteers at the crisis center in KLIA were being provided with meals. People from faith-based organizations were organizing, you know, counseling,
prayers, mass prayers,
and prayers and everything. So Malaysians stepped up, but the Malaysian government did not.
And I think Malaysian has proved that when it comes to times of disaster, even during the recent flood, people can actually mobilize themselves without the help of government. You can see that even people who are superstitious, like the Raja Bomo, wanted to lend his his whatever help that he can. But to me, I see it in a positive view, because at least you're doing something to show that you care about the issue.
But I have a different points here. Perhaps I'm not a Malaysian, so coming from the third perspectives, it's very dangerous when the government has been reacting to this certain incidents, because it plays with the people's mindset, meaning that there are still people that who are very active to help, giving helping hands to these incidents, but then I will say majority will still are being very ignorant. They will say, oh, it's typical governments, how they react to this, so well, why should I care? And then yet yesterday was the first year of remembering MH370, but how many people out there, even at the social platforms, they did mention about MH370. They were focusing more on the International Women's Day and other events that were going on. So the remarks and also the notification on this special incident, it needs to be more, I would say it has to be boosted up.
Of course.
From the public, and definitely the root is so deep that how the government has been, playing their roles, and then thus playing with the people's mindset. People just go with
Yeah,
it.
but this is what, unfortunately, the government is depending on. Imagine, if we had something yesterday that was organized, not that we depend on government for everything, but it's important to have a central, one unifying event. Imagine if that was done to respect, to
Right.
honor their memory, to keep them alive in our consciousness and in our hearts. It's simple to do,
Yep.
Yet even that it wasn't Malaysian government was not willing to do because it's depending on that. Precisely what you said, Grace, which is next year maybe it won't even be at this level. Maybe it'll be less, and the following year, and so forth. And this is a problem because we owe it to the passengers and crew on board this airplane. This was Malaysian Airlines. This was our flag. This was our responsibility to some extent, and yet we are treating it as a nightmare that we hope would go away with the sun rising up. So it's just, we should do better. But you know what? Can I just say, is that the Malaysian people actually, when they looked at the Malaysian government, they decided, we're not going to depend on them.
Yeah.
Really?
You see it very
We're not gonna
clearly
we're not
during
gonna
the
depend on
floods.
them. Yeah.
During the national floods in a lot of different
Right.
states in Malaysia, you see people mobilizing themselves, even creating centers, crisis centers themselves. They don't even depend on government. Even ISMA was there to mobilize themselves to help with the victims. I mean, kudos for ISMA for
Sure.
that. Yeah.
Well, because to some extent, people realize that we can't depend on government anymore on a lot of things. It's good in one sense because it empowers people, it empowers communities to be able to take responsibility, to care, to be empathetic with regards to what's happening. That means somebody's in need, you go out and you want to help, you feel that. But it also gives a very unpleasant aspect to it, which is, we give up on the government. They can't do it.
Sounds like an anarchic society.
It's not so much anarchic. It's just that it's that these are institutions that we basically entrust to speak up on our behalf, to take care of citizens in this country, and then we realize that they can't do it. They can't even respond to this. Okay, we're going to give up.
Maybe that explains the rise of libertarian thinking in this country. The need of smaller governments. But in reality, it's not so much whether the government should be big or small. The government should respond to certain issue or be more transparent. I think what is lacking in the Malaysian political scene is a strong leadership, the kind of leadership that you would expect in almost all the politicians in this country, which is lacking. And the reason why it's lacking, is it because of the structure of the Malaysian politics, or is it because the Malaysian leadership in terms of personality has become weaker and weaker? I mean, I haven't seen a stronger leadership since Mahathir's time.
Let's face it, MH370, the failure of leadership was, at least in the first few days, was so apparent. Everybody was all over the place. 6 people, I think, at one point were up there doing the press conferences. Malaysia didn't seem like it wanted to take charge, but at the same time it had to take charge reluctantly. And thank God we had Datuk Sri Hishamuddin, who stepped up as the acting transport minister to provide a coherent voice, a leadership in terms of handling this crisis. Because honestly, if you were to look at who's there now today as transport minister or anybody else who has similar capacity, nobody would have been able to do it. And that's the sad reality that we have to face, that in times of crisis, when we want someone to step up and take charge and be
the man,
well, be the man or be the woman, or to be able to hold and to provide that leadership in a crisis, the stage is very, very empty. And I have to say here that when you look at it, unfortunately, Malaysia is a very feudalistic, system in terms of government. It all depends on the top guy. If the top guy is weak, then it's going to be weak. Or it depends on the top guy parceling out the goodies to the bottom down. So
Power is very concentrated to the top in a way.
to the top. So you look at the feudalistic system that we have here, it is detrimental. We need decentralization of responsibility, of power, in order for us to have a better government. If we want a better country, we need to invest in participating in our democracies to get a better government. So let's not blame it all on government either. We have to blame it upon ourselves, because we take a back seat when it comes to politics in this country.
So at the end of the day, I think leadership starts in all of us. I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, but in a way that, I mean, blaming the government is one thing. I think trying to rebuild the leadership from the ground out is probably the next best thing that Malaysian society can do.
You know, speaking of that, on that point, the families of the passengers and crew of MH370 don't care about the leadership issue, these politics, these the controversies and everything. They just want to know what happened to their loved ones. And we have a duty and responsibility to be able to work as best as we can, to do what we can, to be able to get these answers. Because at the end of the day, as I said to you just now, this was our aircraft, this was our airline, that was our flag. We need to be able to show the world that we care.
It's true.
And leadership is needed when it comes to addressing these issues, and leadership is today what we lack in this country.
So with that, thank you very much, Azrul. Thanks for speaking to us about the MH370. And yeah, thanks, Grace. That's all from us today.
Thank you for having me.
And by next week, by tomorrow, we will discuss another pertinent issue in Southeast Asia. Stay tuned, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And you can always listen to us live at DurianASEAN.com, or you can listen via your mobile at your TuneIn app by searching for DurianASEAN, one word.